Thank you guys for allowing me to record tonight. We are going to continue our study of the book of James. We're going to be picking up in just a moment with verse 5, and we will be reading from verse 5 to the end of verse 8. And do we have a volunteer who would like to read verse 5 through 8?
Okay, Revised Standard Version. Here we go. If any of you is lacking in wisdom, ask God, who gives to all generously and ungrudgingly, and it will be given to you. But ask in faith, never doubting, for the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. For the doubter, being double-minded and unstable in every way, must not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Wow.
Okay, so what is the problem that Christians lack in verse 5? There's something that we often need in our lives that we don't have. What is that?
Wisdom.
Yes. And do you remember how we defined wisdom last time? What is wisdom? If I ask you, what is wisdom? How will you define wisdom?
The ability to make good choices.
Yeah, choices that please God according to moral excellence. So sometimes when we think of choices, we think of successful choices versus unsuccessful choices. I had a friend one time who bought IBM stock when it was really cheap and then ended up making all kinds of money. And I have another friend in Hong Kong who did the same, played the stock market and ended up getting mega rich. And now he golfs all the time. He hasn't worked the last 10 years because of all the money he made in the stock market. People will say, wow, you made a good choice. You bought the right stocks. But when we come to James, the choices that we're talking about are not business success choices. They are choices connected to making the right decisions that please God and are in keeping with his moral nature. So I like the fact that he assumes the fact that he may not have wisdom. So if we don't have wisdom, what are we supposed to do about it?
Ask God.
Ask God. Now, I want everybody to stop for a moment. Have any of you guys asked God for wisdom today?
I haven't asked for wisdom today. I'm mostly praying about sick people that need healing today.
Mm-hmm. You can think of wisdom to be strength to live a morally excellent life. And when we face temptation, to ask God for wisdom is to ask God that we make the morally excellent choice. And Proverbs outlines for us what that looks like in a whole host of different ways. So if you want a backdrop for what wisdom is, read Proverbs. It's helped me more than any other book understand what wisdom is and what it isn't. But if we realize that in our lives, think about it like this. If we realize that in our Christian life, we lack the strength to do the morally excellent things that God wants us to do, then we are to ask of him, realizing something about him. And what do we need to realize about God in verse 5?
God is generous and unstinting or ungrudgingly gives.
Yeah, God's not cheap. God's not cheap. I have a friend who got filthy rich in Hollywood, and I'm going to be careful how much I say because I don't want this ever to get back. But I have a friend who got filthy rich in Hollywood, and at one point, I unashamedly asked him for money to help me with my ministry. and he didn't do it. And then I have another friend who's a billionaire who lives in Florida, and I've been counseling his daughter who's been going through a divorce. And my billionaire friend one time told me that because I'd been so helpful to his family that he wanted to help me out in a significant way. And then when I had problems and needed surgery for my arm, had a long recovery, um, needed a lot. I was paying $100 a day for physical therapy, and that went on for 5 months. So you guys do the math of how much money that is, but let's just say it was a lot of money, okay? And so I turned to my billionaire friend, and I said, remember when you mentioned this to me a few months ago that you really wanted to help me out? This would be a good time because here's the following need. And you know what he did? Instead of helping me out, he got mad at me for asking, and then he lied and said he had never said that. And I'm like, and I said to his daughter, I said, well, I'm looking at the email in front of me right now where he says it. So either he's forgotten, or he's lying. And he had reproach. When I asked him, he had reproach. And that is the opposite of what God is. And God does when people ask him. God doesn't reproach the people who have need when they ask him. God gives to them. And he promises that it will be given to us. And so God's just completely different from a rich, selfish, stingy billionaire. It's different. So there is a good end to this story because a few weeks after the billionaire didn't give me any money, he and his wife got saved. And he still hasn't given me any money, but God has really God has really turned his life around in a big time way. And he was estranged from me after I asked him, not because I didn't forgive him for his lies, but just because he was so embarrassed for what he had done to me that he didn't really want to talk to me. And God has healed that relationship, and I count him as a friend now, but I'm never going to ask him for any money again. I can guarantee you that. So God is not like my billionaire friend months ago. God is different. So James begins by telling us something about God that we need to know if we're even going to dare to ask him. Okay. But now there's something we need to look at about ourselves in verse 6. And what is that? Verse 6, 7, and 8. What do we need to know about ourselves in James chapter 1, verses 6, 7, and 8, when we ask God for wisdom, when we realize we don't have wisdom? What do we need to think about with regards to ourselves?
We have to have faith and not
Yes.
doubt.
Yes.
Right. We need to have faith and not doubt. But what are we having faith in? There's one specific thing. What are we having faith in?
God will do. God will give it.
That's exactly it. The faith is rooted in one specific thing. And that one specific thing is that God will do what he has said. And if we can ever get it in our Christian lives that God is trustworthy and will do what he says, then that changes everything. Then all we have to do is look at what God has said and then enter into it to live out of those promises rather than live out of the reality of our own making, which often limits God's promises based upon what we feel. So there's two kinds of people in life. There's those who live by their feelings and those who live by their faith. And the people who live by their faith realize that they can enter into all the things that God has said that are amazing, and then if they enter into those things, then they're going to experience the blessing that comes from those things. What do you think, guys, as you look at this statement that we need to learn how to ask God for help and for wisdom, and we need to believe when we ask Him? What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Actually implementing it, though, as a lot of things with the Bible, is a different story.
Yeah.
Okay, now why don't you explain that a little bit?
Well, we have to ask in faith, never doubting. Okay, never. The word never. We are double-minded. I mean, I'll ask 1 minute full of faith, but if it doesn't come through in my timeline, I give up. I can just, I don't actively doubt, but I passively doubt, which is another thing.
Yeah, that's true. I have a very cool story. I sent out a prayer letter a few nights ago because I was extremely burdened about two things. The first thing is one of our friends in Indonesia who we helped save their baby because we wouldn't let her get an abortion when everybody was trying to force her into an abortion. And she listened to us, and we supported her through our Connecting Families ministry. And then she ended up having the kid, and then the father of the kid started to be responsible and then wanted to marry the mom. And so there's been a lot of blessings in the stories, but I was burdened because she needs surgery and I didn't have the money. And then another Muslim woman had come to us saying that she was pregnant not in accordance with Islamic law because she'd been a prostitute to make ends meet for her and her two kids during the pandemic. And she was in her third trimester, and she needed to either abort the baby or find somebody who would be willing to adopt it after she gave birth to it. But she didn't have the money to pay for the deliveries. So she's like, I got two problems. I don't have enough money. I don't have anybody to adopt the baby. And we put out a prayer letter, and there is an Indonesian family who's going to adopt the baby. And tonight, 5 minutes before I got on this phone call, the mom to be is at the house of the Indonesians who are going to take the baby, working out the details of a private adoption. And so I shared in my prayer letter that what we need is somebody to. This Indonesian family is poor, but what they have is time and love and the willingness to take this baby off of their hands. So I said, well, I'll share it with my friends and God will provide. And so I've asked for the grace to be able to care for an orphan. And I feel fully confident that God's going to provide for this family. And we have enough funds in our missionary account, in our Connecting Families account, to pay for the lady's delivery and 6 months of childcare expenses. So I have 6 months to find an adoption sponsor, somebody that will partner with the parents who are going to raise this kid and then pay for the kid as the kid grows up. But we have 6 months worth of money for this kid. But I asked in faith. I didn't doubt one bit. I knew that overnight, after I sent out that letter, there would be enough money that I could fulfill my promise to that woman. Hey, don't worry about your delivery expenses. We'll cover it all. And our friend who needed an appendectomy, we've sent her the money for the surgery to cover it all. And I think that faith is a really important thing to have when we approach God, because God's amazing and God's there to show us that He's our Heavenly Father. So I'm just encouraged because I see that when we approach God in faith, He loves it so much more when we approach him in a double-minded way, saying, well, Lord, I don't know if you could do this. So that's my story from the week of faith while asking God.
Your newsletters work miracles. I'm obviously God, to God be the glory, but yeah, they are moving, Tim. They are moving.
Yeah, and they're often given birth in the middle of somebody's tragedy. But I just feel so blessed because this will be the fifth baby that we've saved with the help of our missionary supporters during the coronavirus. The fifth, and I know the parents, I know the family that the baby's going into, and when the baby is born, they're naming the baby after me, which is really cool. the the baby's first name will be Indonesian, but his last name will be Conkling. The baby's going to have our name.
Oh, they're
Really?
not going to use Timothy.
Nope, they're not going to call it Timothy. They're giving it an Indonesian first name, but they want the baby's last name to be ours. So I'm just thankful to God that it's possible with a limited amount of funds to rescue this baby. But the mom has such a sense of relief. And when we sent her all the money for the delivery costs and everything, and we had promised her this a few weeks ago, but I hadn't read the letter yet. And then to see the Lord come through and us be able to send the money to her and then to see her response, it gives a lot of joy. But I want to encourage all of you to not doubt God when you ask in faith for the things that he's promised that he will do, which is supply for his people and give wisdom to those who lack it. And if we live by these promises, then we'll start trafficking in miracles. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to start trafficking in miracles instead of wallowing in unbelief, because that's the God that we worship. He is a God of miracles. So, moving on, 9 through 11. 9 through 11.
Okay. But let the brother of humble circumstances glory in his high position, and let the rich man glory in his humiliation, because like flowering grass, he will pass away. For the sun rises with a scorching wind and withers the grass, and its flower falls off, and the beauty of its appearance is destroyed. So too the rich man in the midst of his pursuits will fade away.
Okay, now, if you want 3 verses to overturn the way that most people think about life and money, here they are. What's the first statement? Well, who's the verse 9 referring to? What group of people?
Well, it says the brother, so it must mean like a believer.
And a believer who's in what kind of a situation in life?
Humble circumstances, so not so rich or important, just an ordinary guy, maybe low income guy, hardworking.
Yeah, and what's he supposed to do?
Glory
What's
in
that dude supposed to do?
his high position.
Okay, imagine it's during the coronavirus. There's people who are poor, who don't have anything to eat, and they're begging on the streets. Okay, like a lot of the people I saw in Pattaya. And we walk down the street, and I say to the poor person, "You need to glory in your high position." They're gonna look at me like, "You be crazy, dude." Okay, you've got to realize the ridiculosity of this verse. Let the brother of humble circumstances glory in his high position. Okay, and then he overturns worldly wisdom in verse 10 by saying something, which is, what does he say? Verse 10.
The rich, they wither.
Yeah, well, that's the second thing he says. What's the first thing he says?
Disappear.
The rich man
Oh,
should
brought low,
glory,
brought low,
glory
brought
in
low.
humiliation. Yeah.
Yeah, so you've got the poor man, the man of humble situation, glorying in his high position. And then you've got the rich man glorying in what?
Humiliation.
Yeah, I don't know too many rich men who glory in their humiliation. I mean, Bill Gates was humiliated when his wife divorced him. Jeff Bezos was humiliated when his wife divorced. Elon Musk doesn't get humiliated very easily. But my point is that he's telling rich people that they ought to glory in something other than their riches, and there's a reason for it. Why should they glory in something other than their riches? What's going to happen to them?
They're going to fade away. They're going to disappear.
Mm-hmm. And what are they like? He gives a very vivid imagery. What are they like?
Their riches will not keep them from dying like wildflowers.
Yeah. They're like wildflowers that have problems in the sun.
Yes. They don't have anyone to tend them.
Uh-huh.
They get dew at night and rain, but
Thing is, we all are flowers, and we all will wither away.
That's the point.
So you can go with God, or you can go without God. We're all going to wither, but you go with God, definitely better off.
Yes, that is very true.
I guess God's not saying that it's wrong to make money, but it's very nice if they can share it when they do get rich, and because they don't necessarily need all those riches, but it's nice to know that the people will share their riches.
Yeah, Elon Musk makes $58,808 per minute, and he's supposed to glory in what? In the fact that he's human, and he's mortal, and he will pass away. And I think the world was really struck when Steve Jobs got cancer, and everybody realized that the man who gave us our gadgets, our iPad, our iPod, our iPhone, our iMac, our iMom, our iDad, who gave us our everything, was going to die an early death and be buried in that god-awful black turtleneck that he wore every time he announced a new product. So I'm sorry. This is just where I'm coming from.
Nothing wrong with black turtlenecks.
Well,
That's how
he had one shirt, okay? He wore it all
No,
the
he
time.
had one shirt. He just had a bunch of shirts that looked the same. Because he didn't want to make a decision how to dress every day, so just wore the same things all the time.
Yeah, it's like Albert Einstein. He didn't care.
Yeah, or like Gresham Machen, remember? Wasn't he the one that had 10 suits, identical
30.
suits in the closet when he died?
30 identical black suits. Okay, but we're getting beyond
Yes,
the
we
past.
are.
The point I'm trying to make is that this uber rich person who everybody thought the world of before he died showed us that he was mortal. And when you read his biography, which is authorized, and read some of the things that he wanted people to realize he thought when he was going through his struggle with cancer treatment, you realize that he was a man who was rich, but he had started to glory in his humiliation. And it's a powerful biography at those points. I mean, the earlier parts of his life, he's as proud as the day is long. But then in the later part, the last few months of his life, he wasn't glorying in anything other than his humiliation. There's a lot of wisdom in that. And, you know, when someone who's uber rich goes on about how their riches don't mean anything and they're mortal, then it's a pretty good thing. I heard Bill Gates interviewed this week. He's got a new book out, has something to do with preventing the next pandemic. And it was just so clear in listening to this interview that came from this week that he was glorying in his humility, in his humble circumstance.
Preventing what?
Preventing the next pandemic. He
Oh,
was contemplating his mortality
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that the only thing that really mattered was trying to invest money to try and prevent people from dying. And it, well, there was a lot from the interview that was very touching. But my point is here's one of the four richest men in the world glorying in his humiliation, because like the grass, he too is going to fade away. So a lot of wisdom in contemplating our mortality, because you know what? Contemplating your mortality causes you to make more wise decisions. That's my point. And people who think they're immortal, they live like hell and they're very reckless with their lives. But people who are conscious that their time is short and their lives are mortal, they live a much careful, more moral, more wise life. So the Bible.
You don't need to look up to these men, Tim. It's
Oh,
one
no,
thing.
I do look
It's
up to
one
these.
thing. It's one thing to live your life the way you've lived your life. Then these guys who, once they see the devil at the door, then they get humble. I'm sorry, but you've probably got a better position in heaven than these guys do.
Well,
You can
I,
gain
I'm
the
not
world
worried
and
about.
lose your soul.
I'm not worried about that, but I've been very touched by the way the Gateses have given away the majority of their money to try and make the world a better place. I'm actually touched by Elon Musk, who I saw an interview with him this last week as well, and he's trying to build companies for the good of humanity and what humanity needs. And people can disagree that what we need is a trip to Mars, you know, with $100,000 price tag per person. But Elon Musk feels like colonizing other planets would be the saving of the human race. And we need to look no more than at Putin to realize that all it takes is one bad leader can do an awful lot to screw up the world that we live on. Oh well.
Yeah.
In any case, we move on into the question of what are you glorying in? Your money, your lot in life, or the fact that you're going to die and burn up? Well, not in hell, but just you're going to be,
well, physically your body goes.
You're physically going to be decayed just like a flower. So what are you glorying in? Everybody, what are you glorying in? What are you boasting in? What are you delighting in? What are you thinking about right now? I mean, we must contemplate these things.
Glad to be alive. Glad to see another day.
Yeah, I think when I take walks or, go up and down the steps at the metro system and stuff, I just think I'm thankful that I can walk around, and that, just today or yesterday, maybe it was, I was walking around Taipei and I was thinking, we live in the top 10% of people in the world. We don't worry about our food and clothing and stuff. And so many people in the world are just destitute. as a thing. I
Yeah.
guess I was thinking about that because of the people in Bali and
Yeah.
you know, the connecting families thing. So I was just
I
thinking,
know.
you know, how was it? I was born into a nice upper middle class family in the U.S. and, you know, never went hungry and all that. And people all around the world just like living with hunger every day.
I
So
know.
I felt like, yeah, like a sense of responsibility, you know.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. But I'm
I feel
also
it definitely.
thankful to be in as good health as we are right now. And just about every day I think about getting old, you know. And what is old age going to be like, you know? Are we going to keep our mental faculties till the end, or are we going to get dementia like so many people we know, you know, that kind of thing. So,
Evie, I was at a school reunion and our headmaster had the oldest lady there, the oldest ex-pupil, and he said, you have to admit that she's absolutely wonderful. She's still got all her facilities
yeah,
instead of faculties.
yeah, faculties,
You got to get
facilities.
the joke. He meant to say faculties, but he said
Yeah.
she's got all her facilities.
Facilities. Yeah.
That is quite funny. Well, let's move on. Verse 12. Verse 12. And we're going to stop at verse 12.
Okay. Blessed is anyone who endures temptation. Such a one has stood the test and will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. Crown of life.
Okay, who wants to read it in a different translation?
Blessed is a man who perseveres under trial, for once he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him.
Okay, so what's the key virtue in verse 12 that's being spoken about? There's a virtue here. What's the virtue?
Perseverance.
Yeah.
Perseverance under what?
Under trial in this translation, under temptation in this translation.
Right. They persevere. People who persevere, they don't give up. People are always saying to me, "Oh, it's so hard." I had a nickel for every person that passed. It's so hard, and I say to them, "Yeah, but disobedience is going to be a lot harder for you to deal with in the long run. So why don't you choose life?" I have a friend. I have two friends who are learning English right now. One of them is our driver, and the other one is my friend Brian's girlfriend. And so Brian's girlfriend can't say TH very well. So the other night when we were eating at the restaurant, I took it upon myself to give her all my tips on how to say TH. So you could say the instead of duh, and three instead of tree. Because there's something about people who say tree rather than three that just gets under my skin like you can't imagine. So she's got really good fluency, but she's got that, 1, 2 tree. I'm like, no, that's a tree out there, okay? But 3 is not the same as tree. So she didn't do something that our driver did. She didn't give up. She persevered. She sat there at the dinner table and practiced 100 times until she could say 1, 2, 3, until she could say it. Because she could say it right. I contrast that with our driver who gives up under trials because we've been trying all summer to get him to say church, a final ch. You won't do it. So, are we going to cha? I don't know. Are we going to cha?
The poor guy's probably embarrassed that you guys correct him.
Well, after we go cha, win. Just go. Okay, just say the final ch.
But you know those Asian languages often they don't have unvoiced consonants. You know what I'm saying?
I know
Like in
exactly what you're saying.
Chinese. Yeah, like they always there's certain sounds that are only at the beginning of a
I
syllable,
know.
never at the end, or never
I know.
unvoiced. Yeah.
I
So I
know.
think that's what you're dealing with there. In
I know
Thai,
that's what
they
I'm dealing with.
have to say ch or che or something. They
But
can't
here's
say.
what I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with somebody who, after I ask him to say it 2 times and try and practice it, and he doesn't get it right. He says, "Oh, it's too hard." And so the other day we were driving in the car and said, "No, what's too hard is somebody in the Ukraine who's trying to get food to me. That's too hard. But you practicing church and trying to say the CH at the end, that's not too hard. Now, doggone it, you're going to say it 10 times. Ready? Cha, 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 cha. Church, 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 church." You know, because I got
Tim's OCD.
so sick of the lack of perseverance. It's something that if he would just persevere, he would receive the reward. So I contrast that with Brian's girlfriend, who sat there and endured 10 minutes of an
1, 2,
English
3.
lesson with me until she mastered how to say the and this and three rather than tree. No, and so I said, "Look, you're about to get married, go to the US." And I said, "If you say 1, 2, tree, people are going to look at you like you are as uneducated as the day is long." So I said, "I'm trying to help you, so that people don't look down on you, because people do look down on you when you say 1, 2, tree." It's like, what? So I said, "So let's work on this." And so Brian said to her, "Yeah, he's right. They're going to look down on you if you say tree rather than
I
three."
think
So
duh is a worse problem.
yeah, I think
Duh,
that
duh,
duh,
duh.
I think duh is a real big problem too. But here's my point, guys. My point is this: that here was a person who persevered
Mhm.
versus here was a person who gave up. And we've tried to correct Wynn's English on a million words this summer, and every time he tries to say it twice, and then he goes, "Oh no, no," he goes, "No, no, no, too hard." And when he starts doing that, I say, "No, no, no, finding food in the Ukraine today, that's too hard." So my point is that this verse here is telling us that, yeah, it's hard. It's not called trials for nothing. And so the person who can get through it by perseverance, they're rewarded. They are rewarded because they're approved, and they receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him. So many people bag out on their Christian life, and they go, "Oh, it's just too hard, just too hard, just too hard. I can't stop falling into temptation. It's just too hard." Well, this verse says it's hard, but it doesn't say that it's too hard. It says that it's possible and that there's a reward promised for those who persevere in their struggles. So we have to deal with the picture of practical Christianity that James gives us, which is that, yeah, it's hard, but look at the promise, a promise of a crown of life. Because if you persevere, you're saying to the Lord who made you, "I love you. I love you." And the people who bag out, I've had people bag out on me. I've had people who walked out of my life. I've had people who gave up on me. I've had people who betrayed me. And all those people who didn't persevere with me, they didn't love me. They used me. And then when it was inconvenient for them to use me anymore, they walked out of my life. Well, this is the way the God of the universe looks at the people who bag out on their Christian faith and hide behind that it's too hard. And this is why we have this promise. The crown of life has been promised to those who love the Lord, because here, loving the Lord is equivalent to persevering in trial and temptation. So I'm gonna stop there, and then turn off the this study after asking quickly. Does anybody have any questions, comments?
It's not, I think Tim just wanted to give an example. It's not that that's the most important thing in the world, but it was just an illustration of perseverance versus non-perseverance. But in the Christian life, our perseverance is with all kinds of much more serious trials, challenge to our faith, encourage each other to keep on.
Well, here's my point. Perseverance is necessary. If you want to receive the prize, which is the crown of life, and prove that you love the Lord, you got to persevere. You can't do what my friend Wynn does in his English lessons. It's too hard. The Christian life is hard. But the Bible says the way of the transgressor is hard too. And often it's harder than the road of obedience. It's fraught with temptations. So let us persevere, everyone, and remember that God has promises for us, and when we live in faith and live according to His word, we enter into those promises. So we're going to stop there for tonight, and I'm going to turn off the recording.